I am Nicole, 29 years old, and the youngest daughter in my family. 6 years ago, I gave up my teaching job in New York City to move back home to Atlanta and care for my aging mother after Dad died. Today is her birthday, and I put everything into making it perfect. But during the toast at the family party, my sister stood up with a smug grin and announced right in front of everyone, "Pack your bags, loser. This house is going up for sale." The room exploded in cheers. My parents looked at me like I was trash and raised their glasses to toast the news. My heart pounded as I stepped outside and made one quick phone call. 10 minutes later, the screaming started inside. Accusations flying, secrets spilling out, and the whole plan crumbling in real time. Before I dive into how it all went down, I'd love to know what time you're listening right now and which city you're in. It's amazing to see how far these stories travel. Our family has always been a mess of unspoken tensions, but nothing prepared me for how deep the betrayal would go. It all started 6 years ago when Dad passed away from a sudden heart attack. He was the glue holding us together, working as a mechanic for over 40 years to provide for us in our traditional Southern home on the outskirts of Atlanta. After his funeral, the responsibility to care for Mom fell squarely on me. I was 23 then, fresh out of college and starting my teaching career at a public school in New York City. The job was demanding but rewarding. Lesson plans, parent meetings, and weekends grading papers in my small apartment overlooking Central Park. But one call from Jessica changed everything. She said Mom wasn't coping well, forgetting bills and barely eating, and the house was falling apart. As the youngest, I was expected to step up since the others had their lives sorted. Jessica, my sister, and the oldest at 41 years old, is a successful lawyer in a downtown Atlanta firm, always buried in cases and client dinners. She drives a sleek SUV, vacations in the Caribbean, and never fails to mention her latest courtroom win, but helping with Mom, that was apparently beneath her schedule. Joshua, my brother, in his late 30s and a busy engineer at a tech company, lives just an hour away but claimed his project deadlines and family commitments kept him tied up. His excuses were always the same. "I'm swamped at work, Nicole. You don't have kids yet, so it's easier for you." So I took an indefinite leave from my job, packed my bags, and moved back into my childhood bedroom in our family home, a spacious 2-story house with a wraparound porch that Mom inherited from her parents. What I thought would be a short stay turned permanent when I saw how bad things were. Mom, Jennifer, now 68, was lost in grief, struggling with arthritis that made simple tasks like climbing stairs painful. She had retired from her nursing job years earlier, and without Dad, the isolation hit hard. I resigned from teaching, ended my budding relationship with David, a fellow teacher who didn't want to relocate, and focused on her full-time. The house became my world. It's filled with memories. The kitchen where Mom taught me to make peach cobbler, the backyard garden Dad tended every summer, the living room where we hosted Thanksgiving dinners. I managed everything: doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, even part-time tutoring gigs to cover bills, since Jessica and Joshua sent minimal help, usually just to check now and then with a note saying they were too tied up to visit more than holidays. About 3 years ago, Mom met Matthew at her routine checkup. Matthew, 45 years old and a pharmacist at the local clinic, was divorced with no kids. He charmed her right away, bringing flowers on their first date, accompanying her to physical therapy, and talking about how he admired her nursing background. Their relationship moved fast, and they married after just 8 months. At first I was relieved. Matthew seemed genuine, helping with meds and encouraging Mom to join a senior book club. He even told me during one of his early visits, "Nicole, you're doing great here. I can take some load off so you can get back to teaching someday." But things shifted gradually. Matthew started making subtle digs about my presence, saying the house felt crowded and Mom needed more couple time. Jessica, who had been distant, suddenly showed interest, calling more often and visiting when I was out on errands. She'd sit with Matthew and Mom discussing finances or home repairs in hushed tones. I brushed it off as family finally stepping up, but something felt wrong, especially when Mom began complaining of fatigue and confusion more often. 6 months ago, it all clicked. I was helping Mom with her phone when I stumbled on a text thread between Matthew and Jessica. The messages dated back before the marriage, with Jessica writing, "Found a good mark. Widowed with valuable property. Youngest daughter living there, might be a problem, but we can handle her." Matthew replied, "Get me the introduction and I'll take care of the rest. Mom's health is key, keep her compliant." My stomach dropped. They had targeted Mom deliberately, using her vulnerability after Dad's death to gain control of the house. Jessica, always money-focused from her law career, saw the property as an easy flip in Atlanta's hot market. Matthew wasn't the caring pharmacist. He was in it for a cut. The pain hit like a punch. These were my sister and stepfather, people who should protect Mom, not exploit her. I didn't confront them right away. Instead, I played dumb, acting grateful for their help while starting to document everything. I noted Mom's increasing forgetfulness after Matthew adjusted her meds, the way Jessica pushed conversations about selling the house during visits, and their private meetings when I stepped out for groceries. The betrayal burned, but I channeled it into quiet resolve. I couldn't let them win, not after everything I'd sacrificed. As I dug deeper, the pieces fell into place. Mom's confusion wasn't natural aging. It tied to changes in her prescriptions that Matthew handled alone. Jessica's sudden concern was just cover for appraisals she'd arranged behind my back. Joshua stayed out of it, but his silence felt like another knife. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got, my heart racing every night as I planned my next move. They thought I was the weak link, but I was about to turn the tables, and it started with watching them closer than they ever imagined. Once I started documenting, the truth unraveled faster than I expected. Mom's health had been declining in ways that didn't add up. More confusion, forgotten conversations, and days where she struggled to recall simple things like what she'd eaten for breakfast. I noticed it tied directly to the times Matthew handled her medications alone. One evening, I checked her pill organizer and saw he'd switched her mild anti-anxiety prescription to stronger sedatives, claiming it was better for her stress. But those weren't what her doctor had ordered. They made her drowsy and disoriented, turning small forgetful moments into full-blown episodes that scared me. I confronted him casually once, asking why the change, and he brushed it off with a smile, saying, "It's just to help her sleep better, Nicole. You worry too much." But I knew better. That was when I dove into the digital trail. Using Mom's old laptop, I accessed her email account. She still used the same password from years ago. There, buried in deleted folders, were messages between Matthew and Jessica from months before he even met Mom. One from Jessica read, "The house appraisal came in high. Atlanta market is booming. We need to accelerate her decline to push the sale." Matthew responded, "Agreed. I'll adjust the doses gradually. Insurance changes are in place too. Policy now lists me as beneficiary if anything happens." The emails kept coming, discussions about real estate agents they'd contacted, discreetly searches for assisted living facilities in the suburbs, and even notes on splitting the proceeds. Jessica taking the bigger share since she orchestrated the intro. It was calculated cold, like they were discussing a business deal instead of Mom's life. My hands shook as I saved screenshots, backing them up on a hidden drive. This wasn't random greed. They'd planned it from the start, using Mom's grief over Dad to worm in. Medical proof came next. I bought small hidden cameras from an online store, discreet ones that looked like charging plugs, and placed them in the kitchen and living room where Matthew often prepared Mom's pills. The footage was damning him, crushing extra sedatives into her tea, muttering to himself about keeping things smooth until the papers are signed. I also scheduled a private blood test for Mom during a shopping trip I took her on, away from Matthew. The results showed elevated levels of unprescribed drugs in her system, causing artificial symptoms that mimicked cognitive decline. To make sure it held up, I reached out to her regular appointments. Matthew had been attending some alone, claiming I was too busy and changing prescriptions without full consultation. One doctor had noted concerns in the records, but Matthew dismissed them as normal aging. I gathered those files too, printing everything and storing it in a locked box under my bed. Building the plan was the hardest part emotionally. I couldn't do it alone, so I confided in Uncle James first. James, Mom's younger brother, at 65 years old and a retired accountant living 2 hours away in Savannah, had always been the steady one in the family. He'd visit monthly, bringing groceries and checking on Mom's finances, and he defended my choice to stay when Jessica criticized it. "Your sister's too focused on her career," he'd say during our phone calls. "You've sacrificed more than they ever would." When I showed him the emails and footage over a secure video call, his face hardened. "This is elder exploitation, Nicole. We need professionals involved." Together, we looped in Ashley, my college friend and a lawyer specializing in family and estate law. Ashley, 30 years old and sharp as they come, had stayed in touch since our days at NYU. She reviewed the evidence and said, "This could lead to criminal charges. Medication tampering is serious. Let's draft protective documents now." We prepared a healthcare proxy naming me and James as decision-makers, a new power of attorney, revoking any prior ones Matthew might have tricked Mom into signing, and a declaration of Mom's wish to stay in the home with in-home care. For the medical angle, I contacted Dr. Danielle, an independent geriatric specialist not connected to Matthew's network. Dr. Danielle, in her 50s, with a no-nonsense approach, agreed to evaluate Mom during a routine check I arranged secretly. Her assessment confirmed mild arthritis but no natural dementia. The confusion stemmed from over-medication. With proper adjustments, she'll improve quickly, she told me. The trap centered on Mom's upcoming birthday party. I'd plan it as usual, inviting family and neighbors, but with hidden elements. I'd invite Dr. Daniel as a surprise guest to witness any announcements, set up additional recording devices in the dining room, and have the legal docs ready for immediate action. James would drive up early, and I coordinated with Detective Martinez, a former classmate from high school, now in Atlanta PD's fraud unit. Martinez, 32 and dedicated to elder cases, reviewed my files and said, if they make a move at the party, we can act fast with a warrant. The emotional toll was brutal. Nights I'd lie awake, torn between loving Mom enough to fight and the pain of seeing my own sister plot against her. Jessica had been my role model growing up, the ambitious one who made partner young, but now she felt like a stranger. Matthew's fake concern during dinners made my skin crawl. Joshua's neutrality stung too. When I hinted at issues, he said, "You're overreacting, Nicole. Matthew's good for Mom." But I pushed through, organizing the evidence into folders, rehearsing what I'd say. The anger fueled me. They thought Mom was an easy target, but they underestimated me. As the party neared, I felt a mix of dread and determination. Everything was in place. The emails, printed footage, backed up, docs signed during one of Mom's clearer days. James promised to arrive with backup if needed, and Ashley had emergency filings ready. The struggle inside me peaked. Protecting Mom meant destroying parts of our family, but letting them win wasn't an option. My pulse raced thinking about the confrontation. It was time to expose them, and I was ready for the fallout. Planning Mom's 68th birthday party was my cover, and I played it perfectly. I acted like nothing was wrong, smiling through gritted teeth as I coordinated every detail to make it a day she'd love. I spent weeks preparing her favorite southern dishes, fried chicken, collard greens, and cornbread from her own recipe cards yellowed from years of use. I practiced the cornbread twice to get the texture just right, like she taught me when I was a kid. The dining room table was set with her best china reserved for special occasions, and I hung fairy lights across the porch to give our Atlanta home that warm, nostalgic glow. I even tracked down a bottle of sweet tea moonshine from a local distillery, a nod to Mom's love for Georgia traditions, to serve as a surprise during the toast. But beneath the cheerful facade, I was setting the stage for a showdown. Jessica and Matthew thought they had the upper hand, and I let them believe it. Their confidence grew as the party neared. Matthew upped Mom's sedative doses the week before, saying it was to keep her calm for the big day. I caught him slipping an extra pill into her morning tea, his back turned as he stirred it in the kitchen. Jessica, meanwhile, was bolder, bringing over a stack of real estate documents during one of her visits. She left them on the counter, assuming I wouldn't notice, glossy brochures for assisted living facilities with names like Serenity Pines and Golden Horizons. She even joked with Matthew in front of me, "Mom'll love the spa days at these places, right?" I forced a laugh, my stomach churning, but I didn't tip my hand. My first move was to undo Matthew's tampering. 3 days before the party, I swapped Mom's pills back to her original prescriptions, the ones Dr. Danielle had confirmed were safe. I did it discreetly, replacing the sedatives when Matthew was at work. By the second day, Mom's eyes were brighter, her conversations sharper. She asked me about the party plans with a clarity I hadn't seen in months, saying, "Nicole, you're working too hard for this old lady." I hugged her, hiding my relief. If she was alert for the party, their plan would crumble faster. To keep them off guard, I planted a fake brochure for a condo in downtown Atlanta among their papers, one I'd mocked up on my laptop to look real. It listed a price far below our home's value, suggesting I was clueless about the market and planning to move out soon. Matthew took the bait, smirking when he saw it and saying, "Smart move, Nicole. You'll need a place once we get things settled." Jessica nodded, her eyes gleaming with smug satisfaction. Their overconfidence was exactly what I needed. They thought I was out of the game. I finalized the guest list with precision. Alongside family, I invited our neighbors Danielle and Christopher, a couple in their 60s who'd known Mom since I was in diapers. They'd noticed her recent confusion and asked me privately if something was wrong, so I trusted they'd back me up if things got heated. I also confirmed with Dr. Danielle, who agreed to attend as a family friend to observe Mom's condition in real time. Uncle James would arrive early, parking nearby to stay out of sight until needed. Detective Martinez, my high school friend now with Atlanta PD, was on standby, with a warrant based on the evidence I'd shared: texts, emails, and footage of Matthew's medication tampering. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my room finalizing a video confession I'd recorded on my phone detailing the 6 months of investigation, the emails, the footage, the blood tests. I uploaded it to a secure cloud drive and set an email to auto-send to Ashley, my lawyer friend, in case anything went wrong. The weight of what I was about to do hit hard. Exposing Jessica and Matthew meant tearing apart what was left of our family, but letting them steal Mom's home, her sanctuary filled with memories of Dad's laughter and her garden, wasn't an option. I gripped the edge of my bed, my heart heavy but resolute. The morning of the party, the house buzzed with last-minute prep. I arranged fresh flowers from Mom's garden on the tables, their scent filling the air. Mom came downstairs in a new green dress I'd bought her, looking more like herself than she had in months. "You're spoiling me, Nicole," she said, smiling, and for a moment I could almost forget the storm coming. Matthew, in a pressed shirt, played the doting husband, adjusting her shawl and calling her darling for show. His act made my skin crawl, but I kept my cool, offering him coffee like nothing was amiss. Jessica arrived early, her designer purse slung over her shoulder, and made a show of helping with the food. "This is going to be perfect for Mom," she said, her tone dripping with fake warmth. But I caught her and Matthew exchanging a glance when they thought I wasn't looking. A quick nod like they were finalizing something. Then Matthew pulled me aside, his voice low. "Nicole, after today, we're finally getting rid of this burden. Mom deserves better than this old house, don't you think?" I nodded vaguely, my pulse spiking. Burden. He meant me. And Mom's independence. Right before guests arrived, Jessica made a comment that nearly broke my composure. "Assisted living will be a fresh start for Mom," she said, flipping through her phone, probably checking real estate listings. "You'll have your life back too, Nicole." Her casual dismissal of Mom's home, where we'd carved pumpkins on the porch where Dad's toolbox still sat in the garage, lit a fire in me. I excused myself to check the oven, my hands shaking as I double-checked the hidden cameras I'd set up in the dining room, their tiny lenses tucked into a centerpiece. As the clock ticked closer to the party, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Every detail was in place, the evidence locked in my room, the witnesses ready, the legal papers signed. Dr. Danielle would watch for signs of tampering, James was minutes away, and Martinez was a call away with the warrant. The betrayal stung, but my anger was sharper. Jessica and Matthew thought they'd outsmarted me, but I was ready to flip their world upside down. My heart pounded as the first guest knocked, the tension building like a storm about to break. The party was in full swing by 6 p.m. with over 20 guests filling our Atlanta home with laughter and chatter. The dining room glowed under the fairy lights, and the smell of fried chicken and cornbread hung in the air. Mom sat at the head of the table, her green dress catching the light, her eyes clearer than they'd been in months. She smiled at the neighbors, Danielle and Christopher, who toasted her with sweet tea moonshine. Matthew hovered near her, playing the perfect husband, while Jessica mingled with guests, her lawyer charm on full display. But I caught their quick glances, a nervous edge beneath their smiles, like they knew the moment was coming. I kept my composure, refilling glasses and passing plates, my heart pounding with every step. The hidden cameras in the centerpiece were recording. Dr. Danielle was watching Mom's every move, and Uncle James was parked a block away waiting for my signal. Detective Martinez was on speed dial, ready with the warrant. Joshua, my brother, arrived late with a half-hearted hug for Mom, avoiding my eyes. His neutrality stung, but I stayed focused. Everything hinged on what happened next. After the main course, I brought out Mom's birthday cake, a 3-tiered vanilla masterpiece decorated with peach slices, her favorite. We sang happy birthday, and for a moment it felt like the family we used to be. Then Jessica stood tapping her glass with a spoon, her smile sharp. The room quieted, all eyes on her. "I'd like to make a toast to Mom," she began, her voice dripping with false warmth. "She's given us so much love, and today we're giving her a new chapter. We have wonderful news. This house is going up for sale, and Mom will move to a beautiful assisted living facility with top-notch care." The guests clapped, some raising glasses, thinking it was a thoughtful plan. Matthew beamed, squeezing Mom's shoulder, but her face froze. What she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the cheers. "This is my house. I never agreed to move." Matthew leaned in, his tone patronizing. "Susan, we discussed this yesterday. It's for your health." Mom shook her head, her clarity piercing. "I don't remember agreeing to anything." My pulse raced. This was the moment. I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Actually, let me help everyone understand what's really happening." I pulled my laptop from under the table where I'd stashed it earlier and opened the folder of evidence. "Jessica and Matthew have been planning this for years," I said, clicking play on a video from the kitchen camera. The screen showed Matthew crushing sedatives into Mom's tea, muttering, "This'll keep her compliant for the sale." Another clip, Jessica on a call saying, "Once the house sells, we split it 60-40. She won't remember a thing." Gas filled the room. Danielle, our neighbor, covered her mouth, whispering to Christopher. Joshua's jaw dropped, his eyes darting to Jessica. "What is this?" he stammered. Jessica's face paled, but she recovered fast. This is ridiculous, Nicole. Those recordings are fake. An invasion of privacy. Matthew jumped in, his voice rising to a shout. You've been spying on us. You're pathetic, trying to sabotage Mom's future. I didn't flinch. Let's talk about sabotage, I said, pulling up the emails. I projected them onto the wall. Messages between Jessica and Matthew from 3 years ago before he met Mom. One read, widowed, valuable property, daughter's a problem. Handle her. Another, adjust her meds to speed up confusion. The guests went silent, the air thick with shock. Mom's eyes widened, her hand gripping the table. Matthew, she said, her voice trembling, is this true? Before he could answer, Dr. Danielle stood up, her presence calm but commanding. I'm Dr. Danielle, Susan's geriatric specialist, she said, introducing herself to the stunned crowd. I've examined Susan recently, and her blood tests show elevated levels of unprescribed sedatives causing artificial memory issues. These are not her prescribed medications. She held up a lab report, passing copies to the guests. This is medical tampering, and it's been happening for months. Matthew's face flushed red. This is outrageous. You can't prove anything, he yelled, slamming his fist on the table. Jessica pointed at me, her voice shrill. She's lying to keep control of the house. She's obsessed with Mom, but the evidence was undeniable. I played one last recording, Matthew telling Jessica, once we sign the sale papers, we're set. She'll be in assisted living by next month. The room erupted in chaos. Guests whispered furiously, some shouting questions at Jessica and Matthew. Danielle and Christopher looked horrified, turning to Mom with concern. Joshua stood up, shaking his head. Jessica, you told me Mom needed professional care. Was this all a lie? Jessica snapped. Stay out of it, Joshua, but her confidence was cracking. That's when Detective Martinez walked in, badge visible, warrant in hand. Matthew, Jessica, he said, his voice firm, we need to talk. I have evidence of elder abuse and fraud tied to this property. The screaming started then, Matthew yelling about his rights, Jessica threatening lawsuits, her voice breaking as she realized the trap had closed. Mom stood, her eyes clear and furious, staring at them both. You tried to take my home. My life, she said, her voice cutting like a blade. Get out of my house. Don't ever come back. The guests parted as Martinez escorted Matthew and Jessica toward the door, their protests echoing. Mom grabbed my hand, tears streaming, but her grip strong. I stood tall, the weight of months of planning steadying me. The truth was out, but the storm wasn't over. It was just beginning, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The chaos of Mom's birthday party faded into an eerie quiet as Matthew and Jessica were escorted out by Detective Martinez. The guests stood frozen, some whispering, others clutching their drinks, unsure what to say. Mom sat at the table, her face a mix of anger and relief, her hands still gripping mine. Danielle and Christopher, our neighbors, moved to her side, offering soft words of comfort. Joshua, my brother, hovered near the door, his face pale, muttering, I didn't know Nicole. I swear I didn't. But I couldn't look at him. Not yet. The truth was out, and now came the consequences. Within days, the legal fallout hit hard. Detective Martinez's warrant led to Matthew's arrest for elder abuse and medication tampering. The blood test Dr. Danielle provided confirmed unprescribed sedatives in Mom's system, enough to trigger artificial confusion for months. His pharmacy license was revoked permanently by the state board, and the marriage was annulled on grounds of fraud. Matthew had no claim to Mom's house or assets. He tried pleading his case, claiming he was just helping Susan cope, but the evidence was ironclad. Last I heard, he'd left Atlanta, tail between his legs, starting over somewhere out west. Jessica faced her own reckoning. The emails and recordings exposed her role in orchestrating the scheme, leading to criminal charges for conspiracy and financial exploitation. Her law firm dropped her, and disbarment proceedings began, unraveling her perfect career. She sent me a letter 3 months later begging for forgiveness, claiming she'd been blinded by ambition. I read it once, then burned it in the backyard. You tried to steal Mom's home and her health, I told her over the phone when she called. There's no coming back from that. I hung up and blocked her number. That was the last we spoke. Joshua was different. He'd stayed out of the plan, but his silence had enabled it. After seeing the evidence, he apologized, tears in his eyes, saying he should have questioned Jessica's stories about Mom's decline. I listened but kept my distance. You chose to look away, Joshua, I said. That's not family. He moved back to his life, and we haven't spoken since. The betrayal cut too deep for reconciliation. Not now, maybe never. Uncle James stepped up, helping secure restraining orders against Matthew and Jessica to keep them away from Mom in the house. He also worked with Ashley, my lawyer friend, to return every cent of the gifts Matthew had siphoned from Mom's accounts under the guise of household expenses. The house Mom's sanctuary filled with memories of Dad's tools and her garden stayed hers, protected by a new trust we set up to ensure her wishes were honored. Mom's health turned around fast once she was back on her proper medications. Within weeks the fog lifted. No more forgotten conversations or dazed looks. She started gardening again, planting roses where Dad used to grow vegetables. I thought I was losing my mind, Nicole, she told me one morning over coffee. You saved my life. Her words hit hard, and I hugged her, feeling the weight of 6 years of sacrifice finally ease. She pushed me to reclaim my own life, saying, You gave up so much for me. It's time you live for you. I started teaching part-time again, taking online tutoring jobs that let me stay close to Mom while rebuilding my career. The house felt alive again. We hosted small dinners with Danielle and Christopher, laughed over old photos, and planned a trip to Savannah to visit Uncle James. Every corner of the home, from the porch swing to the kitchen counter, held our history, and keeping it safe felt like honoring Dad too. Looking back, I learned a hard truth: family isn't defined by blood but by who stands by you. Jessica and Matthew plotted against Mom, treating her like a pawn for profit. Joshua's inaction was its own kind of betrayal, but Mom, James, and I rebuilt something stronger, a bond rooted in trust and vigilance. If I hadn't trusted my instincts, documented every red flag, and acted despite the pain, we'd have lost everything. Sometimes the best revenge isn't vengeance, it's exposing the truth and walking away from those who don't deserve you. My advice to anyone listening: watch for changes in your loved ones, especially the elderly. Check their medications, question sudden declines, and don't ignore your gut when something feels off. Elder abuse is real, and it often comes from those closest to you. Protect what matters, even if it means cutting ties. Mom got her life back, and I got mine, but the scars of betrayal remind me to stay sharp. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever dealt with toxic family members, share your experience in the comments. I'd love to hear how you stood up to them. Subscribe for more stories about fighting back against manipulation, and let's keep this conversation going. The sun sets slowly over our Atlanta home now, and Mom and I sit in her garden surrounded by blooming roses. For the first time in years, we're smiling, truly free. But I'll never forget how close we came to losing it all. A lesson etched into every step we take forward.